I was still 2 steps outside the doors when I saw it. My own face on the 86th trespass board behind the cashier's cage. Same beard, same denim jacket, time stamped with tonight's date. I hadn't even crossed the carpet yet. The cashier looked at me, then at the board, then at me again like she was trying to do math only she could see. The automatic doors breathed warm air over my neck, and the smell of cigarette smoke and carpet cleaner hit like a wave. My buddy Luis slapped my shoulder. "Bro, come on." So I pretended hadn't noticed my own mugshot and followed him into the noise. We were in town for a conference, and I only play low-limit blackjack. Nothing fancy. At the first shoe, the dealer called checks play. The pit boss nodded, and I tried to shake off the weirdness by focusing on the math. But every time I glanced up, the fisheye dome above the table seemed to drift a degree, like the eye in the sky was breathing closer. When I colored up after a small win, the floor phone at the pit rang immediately. The boss answered, listened, then put his palm over the receiver. "Sir, would you mind flashing your ID?" "Why?" I said, trying to sound casual. "Compliance," he said. Big night. It wasn't. The table was half full and my biggest bet had been 3 green chips. Still, I handed over my license. He looked at it too long, then too short, then copied the number onto a paper slip and slid it under the rack like a magician palming a coin. Luis wanted craps. On the way past the cage, I stared hard at the board. My photo was still there, but the name under it said Jake K. Not my name. The date line read 10:17 p.m. It was 9:53. I checked my phone in case I'd misread time. No, my time was right. When I looked back, a cashier was adjusting a stack of 20s and, without touching the board, the photo had shifted an inch left. As if a cursor had nudged it. At craps, I tossed the dice twice, hit nothing, and felt a cold fingertip press my wrist where you check a pulse. No one stood next to me. "You okay?" the stickman asked. "Yeah," I said, and the word felt like it slid off my tongue and down into the table's foam. We took a lap. Every slot screen I passed reflected me a fraction of a second late, like I was walking behind myself. At a bank of video poker, a woman in a visor leaned back to stretch, and her visor shadow cut across my reflection, but not across me. I told myself I was tired. I told myself the board was a glitch. I told myself cameras sometimes lagged. At the cashier, a new sign had been taped to the glass. Nitrogen monoxide cash for self-excluded patrons. The words felt aimed at my teeth. A security officer drifted closer in that polite orbit casino guards use when they don't want to spook the cattle. "How long you in town?" he asked, like we were old neighbors. "Conference," I said. He glanced at my hands. "What do you do?" I said IT because that is a word that ends conversations. It didn't end this one. "We've had spoofers," he said, which made no sense until he added, "of IDIS." Luis finally hit a run. I roulette and I stood behind him for luck, palms flat on the rail. Over the speaker system, a text-to-speech voice burbled, "Security to Bravo 3. And the pit boss looked straight at me when the voice said security. The floor phone rang again. He answered, kept his eyes on me, and said, "Understood." He hung up and took one step toward us, stopped when another man in a suit appeared at his elbow and whispered something that made the pit boss go pale. "Sir," the new suit said to me gently, "could you come with us to verify something with your account?" "Won't take a minute." I should have left. I should have made a scene. Instead, I walked like a polite animal. They took me through a door marked "Employees Only" into a hallway that smelled like hot dust and bleach. In a small interview room with a bolted-down table, a woman from compliance slid a photo across the metal. It was a still from a surveillance feed. Me at a blackjack table, same jacket, same posture. The timestamp read 10:23 p.m. 30 minutes in the future. That's not possible, I said. She tapped the corner of the photo. In the reflection of the dome above the table small, fisheye distorted was the top of a head right behind my shoulder. In the actual image, no one was behind me. Have you ever filed a self-exclusion? She asked. No. She clicked her mouse. Another image. Me at a slot bank I hadn't visited tonight, holding a voucher. Timestamp 1:14 a.m. She pulled a drawer and laid out a paper I didn't remember signing. Request for self-exclusion. My signature at the bottom, shaking just enough to be mine. I didn't. I started. The door opened. A guard I hadn't seen yet leaned in and placed a clear evidence bag on the table. Inside, a player's card with my name and tonight's date. Edges worn like it had lived in a wallet for months. We're not accusing you of anything, compliance said. Voice, soft like a towel. But we are going to trespass you going forward. We'll escort you out. You won't cash chips here again. You think I'm someone else, I said. Or you think someone is me. She looked at the photo one more time and her professional calm wobbled. I think there's one more person in these shots than the floor saw, she said. And I don't like who it's standing behind. They walked me out the long way, not past the cage with the board. On the sidewalk, the night air felt like an apology. Luis texted, "Where'd you go? They said you left." I wrote back, "I'm outside." He replied with a selfie at the craps table. In the upper left corner of his photo, a mirrored dome showed a tiny version of him, and behind tiny him a shape leaned close, had where an ear would be, a blur the exact height of me. 2 months later, I got a tax form in the mail from that casino for a slot jackpot at 1:14 a.m. I didn't win it. The photo stapled to the form showed a man in my denim jacket holding a voucher and smiling to wide. The top of a head in the dome above him leaned into his ear. I don't gamble anymore. I don't walk under mirrored bubbles. When I pass a cashier window, I don't look left. I already know what I'll see. I always self-park because valet feels like handing a stranger your dog. The casino garage was a concrete spiral with bad lighting and better echoes. My brain was still humming from a decent blackjack run when I hit the elevator. As the doors slid shut, a man in a long coat jogged up, breath clouding. I hit open. He didn't get in. He just watched the doors close with a flat face and a hand in his pocket. Like he was counting. The elevator stopped at level 4, though my car was on 5. I pressed 5. It went to 3. The display blinked like a bad slot. I stepped out on 3 to take. The stairs punched my pride back into my legs and heard a footfall match mine 1 flight down. I paused. It paused. I took 3 fast steps. So did it? I leaned over the rail to look. No one on 2. Just air. Cold enough to taste. On 5 my car stood alone under a buzzing light. A chalk mark curved across my rear tire and arced like a smile. I wiped it with my thumb. Gray stuck under my nail. I told myself the garage staff mark overnight parkers that way. I told myself a lot of things. Quickly. As I unlocked the door, coat guy appeared between two SUVs 1 aisle over, head cocked like a curious dog. You good? He called. Yeah, I said, voice too loud. He pointed at my tire. You're marked, he said. Happens. His tone made the word happen feel like a plan. I got in, locked up, started the engine. The chalk arc on the tire looked brighter now, like fresh dust. As my lights hit the ramp, a sign flashed by. Level 6 closed in tall black letters. The top floor was open to the night. The wine would be cleaner there. I ignored the sign and turned upward. Level 6 was an empty deck and a big sky. The city sounded far away and wrong. As I rolled toward the edge to turn around, my radio, which I don't use, crackled alive. Level 6. A man's voice said, calm, not surprised. Copy, another voice. Thinner. Repeated. Level 6. I looked around for security. Nothing. Just rows of concrete teeth and the shadow of a long coat flicking across the far wall like a film. Something moved behind. My seat belt. I flinched and the buckle smacked the pillar. Get out, the radio said. Hands where we can see them. The thin voice repeated it a beat late. I put the car in reverse. Not because I obey voices, but because I obey tone. The rear camera showed my own bumper and behind it, a pair of shoes toes out under the shadow of my trunk. No legs, just the shoes. Black, polished. Wrong. I spun to look. The deck was empty. The camera stayed full of shoes for one more second, then glitched to static. I headed for the down ramp fast enough to embarrass myself. The dash chimed not. A seat belt chime. My tire pressure light blinked. Rear left. Low. The wheel dragged. Heavy. In the mirror, coat guy walked briskly after me. Not running. Like he knew the zigzags better than my map. I took the ramp to floors at a time, tire complaining, and hit level for straight into a car idling sideways, nose out, blocking the aisle. Its headlights were off. A woman sat behind the wheel, hands at 10 and 2, eyes on me without blinking. She mouthed something. Don't stop, I think, or maybe drop. I threaded past her bumper with a squeal and she never moved. The radio said, 3, and the thin voice said, 3, and the elevator down the aisle opened to an empty car whose floor was wet like someone had just stepped out of a rain that wasn't there. I cut across rows, found the down spiral, and nearly kissed the guardrail. At level 1, an attendant in an orange vest stepped into the lane and lifted a palm. His vest was to clean. His face was the kind you forget. Stop, he said. I kept my wheels rolling and lifted the fingers in apology, and the way his expression emptied told me I'd broken a rule I wasn't supposed to know. I shot out onto the street, heart dry in my mouth. 2 blocks later, the tire pressure light went off by itself. Rear left felt fine. At the first light my phone buzzed. A photo from a number I didn't know. The chalk arc on my tire? Bright, with my hand wiping it. Caption, marked. I wiped my thumb on my jeans and gray grip printed a crescent on the denim. It didn't smudge. At home I parked under a camera and left the car there until morning. Security reviewed the garage tape for me because a friend of a friend works there. Nothing on 6, he said. He sent me a link. In the video, my car goes up, then down, normal. No coat guy, no sideways car. On level 5, the camera shows me wiping a tire that already looks clean. When I step away, the chalk arc fades in like fog. On the stairwell camera, the audio track caught one thing. 2 voices saying level 6 in unison, both mine. A week later, I found a chalk smile on my tire again, even though I hadn't been back. The next time I parked near a casino, I looked at every tire in my row. 6 crescents, faint, all the same size. Maybe it's a prank. Maybe it's a code. Maybe the garage marks you and then your life does. When I hear an elevator ding now, I take the stairs and let whoever's a step behind me pass first. I wasn't drunk. People assume booze explains bad choices. My bad choice was curiosity with clean shoes. The sign above the buffet said restrooms gives, and then, a step later, employees only on the same arrow. I followed the first sign and met the second at a door with a push bar. Someone walked out carrying a plastic rack of clean chip racks and didn't let it swing shut. I caught it with my shoulder and slipped through like a man who thinks he belongs. Wherever the door didn't say no loud enough, the hallway was carpet at first, then industrial rubber, then polished concrete. A hum filled the air, deep and warm, like a big cat purring in a metal cage. I passed a bulletin board with HR notices. and a flyer for flu shots, which made everything feel boring enough to be safe. Then I heard the clatter of metal boxes and the flat slap of latex gloves. I know about the drop. Every table's lockbox gets swapped and wheeled to the count room. I didn't plan to see it. I planned to pee. But a heavy door stood propped, an inch by a rubber wedge, and the hum was louder beyond it. And I have a disease where I think knowing how things work will keep me safe. I nudged the wedge with my shoe and peered through. The count room looked like a bank vault met a laundromat. 5 people in smocks and gloves sat at stainless tables feeding bills into hungry machines that chattered and stacked. Chips clacked into clear trays. A phone on a wall blinked a red light. A camera domed the center. Fisheye view of everybody's head. On the back wall, a whiteboard listed table numbers and times. One column read variants with numbers. In red, one line said be 13 plus for $1,000 and someone had circled it twice. I should have left. Instead, I saw a 6th person that the camera didn't seem to see. He stood at the end of a table, hands clasped behind his back, suit to nice for smocks, watching the stacks grow. Every time a machine spit a strap of 20s, his shoulders rose like tide. When one of the counters laughed at something a coworker said, he didn't smile. He tilted his head, studying the sound like a scientist. He turned a degree and I saw his face, and it was like seeing a wax figure that someone tried to warm with their hands. His eyes slid past me, then back, then past, like he had to persuade them to land. "Sir," someone said behind me. I jumped like a cheap spring. A woman in a polo with a badge that said surveillance stood there with a clipboard and a look that had escorted a lot of men back to carpets. "You can't be here." I started the script as sorry, wrong door. But she was already guiding me with her body, that firm sideways shepherding that uses politeness at a handle. As we turned, the count room's phone rang. No one picked it up. The ring sounded wrong flat, as if the air didn't want to carry it back in the guest world. She didn't let go of the script. "Buffets that way," she said, pointing past the slots. "Restrooms on your left." I wanted to say I hadn't meant harm. I wanted to say I just wanted to see. Instead I asked, "Who's the guy in the suit?" She blinked. "Which guy?" End of the table. She watched my mouth, not my eyes, like she was reading. "There's no guy in a suit in the count room," she said. "There never is." I went to the bathroom because I really did have to go. When I came out, 2 security officers waited. Quick chat, one asked, friendly like a dentist. They took me to an office with no windows and offered me a chair that had probably never been sat in by anyone who felt tall. "We need you to delete any photos you took back there." I hadn't taken any. My camera roll was all buffet plates and a blurry roulette wheel. They watched me scroll anyway. The friendly one's radio crackled. "Variance cleared." The thin voice repeated it. "Variance cleared." He looked at his partner. The partner nodded once like a man erasing a number. They let me go with a warning and a note on my player account. I cashed out and walked toward the parking lot with that light. Embarrassed feeling you get after being scolded as an adult. In the glass of the exit, I saw my reflection and a man in a suit walking 3 steps behind me, hands clasped behind his back, like we had practiced it. I turned, no one there. I turned back. In the glass, the suit stopped when I stopped and tilted his head when I did. He looked pleased to be learning. At home, I dumped my pockets, wallet, player card, crumpled napkin, and a white paper band used to strap money. I hadn't had any strapped money. The band was stamped $2,000 and count verified, and in blue pen someone had written my first name and part of my last, like a clerk labeling a tray. I threw it away. In the morning it lay on my dresser again, smooth and flat. The casino called that afternoon. A man from guest resolution said there had been a discrepancy last night and asked if I had any unusual interactions. I said no. He asked me to confirm my mailing address for our records. A week later, I received a registered letter stating I was prohibited from entering back of house areas, which is a polite way to say trespassed without saying it. Taped to the letter was a photo from a surveillance still of the count room. 5 people in smocks, one empty end of table, the top of a head reflected in the dome above mine leaning too close to a person who was not there. I don't follow arrow signs anymore. I don't trace how it works into rooms that hum. When I hear bills chatter in a stacker on TV, I mute it. If I walk past a bank and the glass shows to me, I don't stop to line them up. Some doors close for your sake. Some close because something on the other side is still counting you.